talking points pushed by Fuentes. And Charlie Kirk himself had said Nick Fuentes is poison.
Why do people think that there is something not right about this? Because the government lies to them about everything.
Your good friend Candace Owens has been putting out some pretty wacko stuff, I would say.
Pretty funny.
That now we're getting the lunatics doing it.
Well, I mean, it's a lunatic.
And there is no greater lunatic than Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Tonight, splits on the US right have exploded, not least over America's relationship with Israel. 27-year-old Nick Fuentes is anti-Israel. Well, frankly, he's anti-Jewish. And he thinks Charlie Kirk sold out. A 5-minute listen to his podcast is 5 minutes down a rabbit hole of anti-gay, anti-women discourse, pumped out to his legions of online fans, mostly male, despite, being shunned by more mainstream right-wing figures. Well, all that changed this week. Tucker Carlson's interview with Fuentes has lit up the political right, sparking fears his pretty ugly brand of politics is going mainstream.
On some level, we do need to be exclusive, not inclusive. We do need to be right-wing. We do need to be Christian. We do, on some level, need to be pro-white, not to the exclusion of everybody else, but recognizing that white people have a special heritage here as Americans.
Plenty more of that coming up, but is it cutting through? Last night, J.D. Vance, the Vice President, was speaking at a Turning Point rally in Mississippi when he came face-to-face with a fair few of Fuentes' fans.
The President of the United States could only get that peace deal done by actually being willing to apply leverage to the state of Israel. So when people say that Israel is somehow manipulating or controlling the President of the United States, they're not controlling this President of the United States, which is one of the reasons why we'd be able to have some of the success that we've had in the Middle East.
So is it just people arguing on the internet or a dramatic shift in American right-wing politics? Joining me tonight in his usual Thursday night slot, Raheem Kassam, editor of the National Pulse, and a man with his finger on the pulse of the MAGA movement, of the Republican movement, of the American right, especially the online discourse of the American right. Raheem, what is going on? This has been bubbling under the surface for a year or so now, but just at the time when the left, frankly, ripping themselves to shreds, radicalising teenagers to the point that they shoot people, isn't this the time for the right to be attacking the left rather than each other?
Yeah, well, thank you, as usual, for having me.
Welcome
Harry. Yours is the only show I'll do.
Excellent.
Yours is the only show that will have me on.
I'm not sure that's true.
But look, I really appreciate the subject. I really appreciate the question. It's something that I mull over almost all the time now. And the Fuentes stuff, I think, is particularly emblematic of a malaise on the political right at the moment. I think there's a listlessness because people are looking towards a post-Trump world. They're trying to figure out what the movement is going to be, what it's going to look like. And listen, I'm let 100 flowers bloom kind of guy. I don't necessarily believe in cancelling people for their speech. And there's a lot of things that Nick Fuentes says that actually resonates with especially white working class men all around the country who feel cut out of the political settlement here. The question is, are we going to move from a MAGA, which has been inclusive. President Trump made a point to reach out to all sorts of people. I mean,
had dinner in 2022 with Fuentes and Kanye West.
He also went out to Hamtramck and had dinner with the Muslim leaders in Hamtramck and, tried to win their votes over, won a lot of their endorsements over, actually, to the chagrin of the Democrats. So it's a very delicate line that we are facing here. But what's really interesting is if you listen to Fuentes of 5, 6, 7 years ago, when he's on television, he's on these live streams giving Hitler salutes and saying all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, let's have a listen to it.
He's very much trying to change the way he comes across now, and you saw that in the Tucker Carlson interview.
Well, yeah, as you say, he once joked about comparing the Holocaust to putting cookies in the oven, saying that every Jew in America must convert to Christianity or leave the country. I mean, the guy is, it is a fringe view that you would expect on the political hard left rather than necessarily the political hard right of late. But there's a difference between cancel culture, in my view, and actively and openly promoting someone. Let's have a little look at some of the Tucker interview there.
I thought you were a Fed. I
thought you were a Fed.
I was a Fed.
Yeah.
I'm not a Fed. But whatever, I don't care what people think.
We showed each other our badges. We know well.
All very jolly there. Let's watch a bit more.
I'm sorry I called you gay, by the way. But I'm always, I think I'm just too old or something. I'm like, what? Why is anyone married? You tell me, why aren't people married?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's the women.
That is a fairly voter repellent message to half the American population who are women, right?
What a loving.
Oh, well, that's my point. That's my exact point.
I will never apologise for calling you gay. By the way.
Yeah, I mean, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Maybe part 2 we'll go through that one. But that's the point that I was trying to make, though, isn't it? There's a difference between, fringes of political movements always have their wackos, right? Mm-hmm. That's just, find me any political party, any branch of any political party, left, right, centrist, there's always that one guy, right? The problem here is that Tucker has an incredible platform, and we had him on the show earlier in the week, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But he has, this is a marked moment in the right, because suddenly Fuentes isn't just the guy shouting to groypers on the internet. He's being platformed by, possibly the most influential broadcaster on the planet.
Listen, I wouldn't have walked in here today thinking that I was going to defend Nick Fuentes at all, but I will say in his defence this. The things that he said there, right, those are like 4chan tropes that you find in the darkest corners of the internet. When he was, in his early 20s, all the way, by the way, being cancelled already at that point.
He's been cancelled multiple times. Right? Yeah, he's
effectively forced out of college. He was put on a no-fly list. There are all these things that sort of pushed him to working in this really weird part of the internet. And it is a really weird part of the internet. He did a video once where he walked around with a furry dressed as a cat around. He's done all sorts of weird stuff. Which is why Tucker
Carlson was presumably at the time said, what he said.
Right, and he said all sorts of weird stuff. But what's really interesting is, you and I have said the same things probably all of our lives, is that sunlight is the greatest disinfectant. And actually, the more coverage that Fuentes seems to be getting, the more platform he seems to be getting, he actually seems to be moderating.
Interesting, but then at the same time, we watched the Turning Point rally last night. Taking up Charlie Kirk's mantle, the Vice President, Erica Kirk, his wife, were there, and I thought it was really striking that a lot of the questions were of that sort of ilk. Sure. Well, we'll talk about the relationship between the US and Israel and the wider Republican movement, but there was a lot of, and J.D. Vance handled a lot of them very well, but there were a lot of sort of hostile questions from the right to Vance, which are talking points pushed by Fuentes. And Charlie Kirk himself had said Nick Fuentes is poison, and he will poison our movement, and he will bring shame to our movement if we embrace him. But it looks like it's kind of already, the stream is already poisoned.
Well, there will be parts of the movement, I think, that will embrace more of an identitarian message. I think there has been a strain of that on the political right on both sides of the Atlantic for a very long time. I have no truck with him personally. He's attacked me online before multiple times.
We've all done that.
And set his... Well, sure, but he's at least funny.
Yeah.
But no, and unfortunately, he's not going anywhere. He's here to stay. He's determined to do it, and he's got a massive audience now.
Yeah.
Right? So you just have to figure out, all right, is there a way to get him to be a little bit more normal, to be a little less cringe, and find that little corner of the movement for him?
Let's have a look at what Kevin Roberts, the boss of the Heritage Foundation, said today. Obviously, the sort of once upon a time, almost the deep state of the right, an incredibly powerful body within the right. The think tank it's more than a think tank. It's a sort of, how would you describe it?
No, it's a hub. It's a hub on the right in America, and it's been that way for decades.
But look what their boss said today.
Christians can critique the state of Israel without being anti-Semitic. And of course, anti-Semitism should be condemned. My loyalty as a Christian and as an American is to Christ first and to America always. We will always defend truth. We will always defend America, and we will always defend our friends against the slander of bad actors who serve someone else's agenda. That includes Tucker Carlson, who remains, and as I have said before, always will be a close friend of the Heritage Foundation. The venomous coalition attacking him are sowing division. Their attempt to cancel him will fail. Most importantly, the American people expect us to be focusing on our political adversaries on the left, not attacking our friends on the right. I disagree with, and even abhor, things that Nick Fuentes says. But canceling him is not the answer either.
Amazing there. I mean, just in that one interview, he's got the boss of one of the most powerful blocks of the right, as you say, out there defending. I mean, they're tilting the arc of the Republican Party towards them. They've got, they're setting the tunes now.
I don't necessarily see that as a defence. The context of it is that the Heritage Foundation has been a sponsor of the Tucker Carlson show. So that's why Kevin Roberts is forced to make a public statement. He's not doing it out of, just being an observer to that interview and wanting to have his say on the matter. But look, I think they did it to... it's been done to me. You know, I remember when the Daily Mail newspaper ran a 2-page spread about me with a big picture of me holding a gun, and they said, "This is Nigel Farage's secret weapon, trained in American dark arts of politics. Look at the crazy things he's tweeted." And I'm still tweeting crazy things to this day. I did it right before we went on air. But there's an element of this where I think, again, look, Nick Fuentes has actually tried to cancel me more times than I'll have ever tried to cancel Nick Fuentes. But I will say this. You don't get anywhere by behaving like petty tyrants. And I think we have to show a little bit of grace and a little bit of humility to say, this guy has a huge platform. And he's got a huge platform in the America First movement. It's not up to us. It's not within our gift to push somebody out and say, hey, you don't deserve this platform. He built it himself.
The counter-argument is you do have the right to do that, and you can do that, and you guys say, this guy is not welcome with these...
You don't have to have him on your show, and I don't have to quote tweet him or retweet him or anything like that.
Just kind of ignore him. You're giving it, having him... having that sort of friendly chit-chat with Tucker Carlson gives him a legitimacy he wouldn't have otherwise had.
I think it's forcing him to face some of his views that he hasn't ever been challenged on before.
But he wasn't challenged.
And he was challenged when the New York Times did a profile piece on him a couple of weeks ago, and he had to answer hard questions by one of the best reporters in the world, Robert Draper. And it actually, these people are holding up a mirror to Fuentes and saying, OK, you've said all these things, account for it. And I've watched the whole interview, and he was held to account. Tucker's job is to ask questions.
Yeah.
OK? That's all there is to it. And if people don't like it, guess what? You don't have to watch it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a nice way. I think that's... the thing is, in the online world, in the way that the news media works now, it's not a case of changing over the channel, though, is it? It's not a case of turning off the channel, because the way things are clipped up and distributed and spread across every social media platform you can possibly think of, you have this stuff rammed down your throat in a way that you didn't used to. You don't have to watch one channel or read one newspaper anymore. This is saturated coverage, and the combination of Tucker's platform and Fuentes' platform made it pretty much unavoidable to not see some of this over the weekend.
Yeah, and he's played into that. He's done an amazing job of building this. He's all over TikTok. He's all over Instagram Reels. You know, I think a lot of people out there wish they had the sorts of coverage that Nick Fuentes has, but ask themselves why they don't. Ask themselves, look, so here's what he does. He gives you a kernel of truth, and he drills you in with it, right? America's relationship with Israel has become too cozy. There's too many Israel lobbyists in Washington, D.C. There's too much money flowing around. And frankly, I will agree with him on this. The first Trump administration spent way too much time on it, and the first year of this administration has spent too much time on it. You know, instead of dealing with jobs here, economy here, America first, as he was elected to do, he spent a lot of time doing international work. And not just Israel, by the way. But Cambodia and, all this other
Wants
stuff.
that peace prize.
So he does want that peace prize, and he's building a legacy right now.
Yeah, of course.
But there are all these people around the country who voted for President Trump because they wanted this economy fixed. Biden's failed economy fixed. And we are no closer to getting there than we were 6 months ago. So they have a right to feel aggrieved.
But J.D. Vance makes the point that, America first isn't America alone or America completely isolated. In fact, it's in America's interest to have a functioning democracy in the Middle East that is recognised by the Gulf states. It's in America's interest to have stability in the Middle East, to keep oil prices stable, and even he's now sort of having to slightly sort of dance to a slightly more gropery tune, you could say, last night, when he was kind of trying to appease all, trying to be all things to all people. So it isn't just the fact it's a sort of internal argument. It is shifting the actual person who, as we discussed last time on the show, is likely to be the next president.
I think it would be really silly of us to say that politics remains the same at any given time.
Yeah.
Politics,
of course.
It's always shifting, the conversation's always shifting. And instead of asking sort of, why this one kid, from Chicago has such a huge platform because of things he's saying, we should be asking ourselves, why do the people feel like listening to him? What about him and what about what he's saying is resonating with them? And you can't deny it. It's not like he's inventing these numbers. When the New York Times decides to profile you, you've got to be cutting through.
Well, the other person that seems to be making a lot of noise is Candace Owens. Obviously, she was a friend, an ally of Charlie Kirk's. They worked very well together in launching Turning Point UK. I remember she came over and was with Charlie at the launch of Turning Point UK in London. She has been pumping out some pretty lively conspiracy theories about Charlie Kirk's death, having to sort of row back on a lot of them about military planes flying out of Egypt, moments after his death, and then realising she was on the wrong time zone, and it's just as you say, little kernels that are pushed and pushed and pushed, and then more and more and more sort of I don't know, rocket fuel put under them that then they turn into this great conspiracy that would imply that the guy sitting in jail for this horrific crime and is on trial for it, the FBI, the US Justice Department, the US military up to the White House are not telling us the truth about what happens. I mean, there's no real justification for that sort of just fake news, right?
Well, frankly, she's a crackpot. I've known her for a while. She's always been like this. She has got a lot of her theories, her political theories, from the sort of Louis Farrakhan Nation of Islam world, the same as Kanye West.
Yeah.
She's
the fringe of the fringe.
And you know what? She's her own worst enemy, because she'll go out there and say something like, "Oh, this plane took off at Utah time," and it says UTC.
Yeah.
That's Universal Time, and she just,
exactly.
She makes this embarrassment of herself day in and day out. I actually have a bigger problem with her as a human being, because she's doing this in the face of her friend, her so-called friend, having been brutally assassinated
and publishing text messages between the two of them.
Nasty stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it won't get her anywhere. But why do people think that there is something not right about this? Because the government lies to them about everything. The government has lied to us about so many things over the past several decades, and so they look at this official line and they go, "Well, maybe there's something else."
Let's see what we had Tucker Carlson on the show on Monday. Let's see what he had to say about Candace Owens. Your very good friend Candace Owens has been putting out some pretty wacko stuff, I would say, would be my opinion, on the death of Charlie. It's not helpful, is it, that, at that time of an incredible national upheaval, and obviously personal and familial family tragedy, to have someone like that picking apart the argument and suggesting that there are darker forces at play here that the US government have a hand in covering up. Can you see why people get upset by that and would like you perhaps to sort of distance yourself from that sort of thing?
Pretty funny. So am I going to attack Candace Owens because you
I'm not asking you to attack her.
I'm not going to do that, Harry.
No,
probably not going to do that. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt as a foreigner of not understanding our politics, but the whole ritual of, this person said something I don't like. In order to be a good person, you must denounce this person. Obviously, I would die before I played along with that.
I'm glad I got my Tucker laugh eventually in the interview. I would have been sad not to have had him laughed in my face and call me a foreigner that knows nothing. In at least 1 hour and 2. All of that interview is available on YouTube. It was pretty lively, so check that out. But I just wanted to play you that, Raheem, on the point, because you seem very willing, and there are other people that seem very willing to criticise Candace Owens and say exactly what you said, but Tucker won't. Where is that? How deep is that split down the middle of the movement? Of those that will sort of turn a blind eye because the government lies about everything, and those that are willing to call her out. I mean, I noticed that Turning Point USA have now actually started to directly address some of the claims that Owens has made, using Charlie's show that's still being broadcast by his colleagues and friends and guests. They are now actively trying to pick apart everything she says. And it goes back to my point from earlier, isn't the way of, rather than just ignoring this, is actually you've got to attack these people or risk having them take over your movement?
I don't think Candace Owens is necessarily capable of taking over the movement. She's been a leftist most of her life. I don't think anyone trusts her with that stewardship. Look, Tucker's a friend of mine. I guest hosted the Charlie Kirk show a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
From here, Charlie was a friend of mine. And so, I have a very particular way of dealing with this stuff as a foreigner, as Tucker would say.
You know nothing about this country.
By the
You're a foreigner.
I will say of Tucker, who's a friend of mine, I will say he has never had a problem opining on the world's affairs himself. So I'm not sure the foreigner line lands with me, and I will make sure to text him about that, because that's the first time I've seen that clip.
Well, watch the whole show. It's good. It's good knockabout stuff.
Oh, well. And the audience should too. But I think when it comes to Candace, she's never going to coalesce enough serious people around her because she says such crazy things. I do agree with Tucker, though. Because our friends say crazy things, it doesn't mean we need to disavow them. We don't have to agree with them. I'm sure I've said lots of things, Harry.
I've spent 20 years ignoring things you say.
Quite right.
But then let's take another figure then. You've got Marjorie Taylor Greene, Congresswoman, very anti-Israel, has been very vocal in the last few weeks, attacking Trump for his focus on foreign affairs. She's going on The View, the sort of bastion of Whoopi Goldberg-led left-wingery on American television. Something fundamental is shaking, and the movement is tearing at the seams.
Yeah, and look, I think we shouldn't necessarily. You're right to bring these people up as examples, but we shouldn't be focusing on the people. We should be focusing what is their big gripe. And their big gripe appears to be Israel and the Middle East.
Well, that's it. That's what it all sort of comes back to. There is a fundamental shift. If you look at the...
And we are allowed to talk about that.
Of course you are. But my point is there's a difference between addressing and looking at America's relationship with Israel and the West's wider relationship with Israel, and including Israel in the broader Western alliance, and making jokes about putting cookies in ovens. Like there is... that's the problem. It feels like the... Things that were being said about Israel and Jewish people in this country and in the UK, we saw the long anti-Semitism massively up in the UK as well. It seems to me that things that being completely unacceptable to say about Jewish people 18 months ago, 2 years ago, post-October 7th, have been kind of neutralised, and people are saying stuff that you just think, where is this coming from?
I was sitting last night at dinner with 4 Jewish friends of mine who all told me that they are starting to get fearful of where this rhetoric is going. Okay, and as the non-Jew at the table sort of said to me, what do you think? Like, what are you hearing as the person who talks to the MAGA right, every single day as I do, and I'm part of that movement? And I said, listen, the problem is that people like, not Kevin Roberts himself, but the Heritage Foundation and big groups on the right in America for decades and decades have basically called Israel the third rail of politics here. You can't touch it, you can't talk about it, and if you do, you're an anti-Semite. Well, that's what, if you try to cancel people over simply expressing skepticism, inquiry, then you are going to get the crazies who come along and start banging that drum and go, see, we can't talk about this. That's how this has come along. So it's almost the fault of the institutional right, conservative Inc., as I call it, that has not let those grievances come to air, that now we're getting the lunatics doing it.
Well, I mean, it's a lunatic.
And there is no greater lunatic than Marjorie Taylor Greene.
I'll clip that bit up for you. She'll like that. But we'll all be looking forward to The View. But it does sort of baffle me. We're going to talk about the left in a moment. But the extreme fringes of the right, it's the horseshoe theory right in action, and it always comes around on Israel. The extreme left in this country, the extreme right in this country, and the wider West. Everyone seems to, at the end of the day, blame the Jews. It's a story as old of time, and it's toxic, right?
Well, it's unfortunately, if you want to get really philosophical about it,
in 30 seconds,
it's sort of promised to them in the Torah. God told this people, the chosen people, that they will always suffer, they will always be persecuted, and
that's why they need need to protect it in their homestead.
And this is what the case I made to my friends last night. I said, listen, and frankly, it applies to everything. Nobody said it would be easy, and it's not.
Raheem Kassam, stay there.